Michael Hastings, of course, a 33-year-old reporter who passed away in a car accident at 4:30 in the morning recently. He wrote for Rolling Stone, BuzzFeed. He was also a contributor to the Young Turks. And we've been asking some questions about his death. Obviously, it was strange circumstances. His car, of course, wound up being in a fiery crash. A lot of people have been asking questions. But overall, you have no evidence yet that there's anything amiss other than a terrible, horrible car crash. But now there is some piece of information that we were looking for, and that is significant, that now makes me think that there should be a much wider investigation. And that comes from Richard Clarke. Now, Richard Clarke is a very significant person. He was a former U.S. National Coordinator for Security, Infrastructure Protection, and Counterterrorism. He's the guy who was right about bin Laden and al-Qaeda. He was in the Clinton administration as a counterterrorism advisor, and then he was in the Bush administration. And he had been telling them, al-Qaeda is coming. We have to do something. We have to do a principals meeting. We have to get ready. They didn't listen to him, and at times they said, oh, he's got his hair on fire. Turned out he was 100% right. Now, he has voiced some concerns about what could be done to cars remotely. And this is shocking, even if you think that there's nothing untoward in the Michael Hastings story, which is, of course, incredibly possible, right? Even removed from that story, this facts that Richard Clarke is giving us is amazing, and it affects all of us. So what is it? Let me explain. He says, there's reason to believe that intelligence agencies for major powers, including the United States, know how to remotely seize control of a car. Whoa, hold on. We didn't know that. Why is this not the biggest revelation in a long, long time? So again, putting Hastings' situation aside for a second, so they can seize control of any of our cars? And what if you have, there's 1.5 million people in the intelligence community. I don't know how many of them have access to this kind of power, but I assume not that many, but a decent amount. How about if they got an ex-wife or a guy they hate? They can remotely control your cars? And he continues, what has been revealed as a result of some research at universities is that it's relatively easy to hack your way into the control system of a car and to do such things as cause acceleration when the driver doesn't want acceleration, to throw on brakes when the driver doesn't want the brakes on, to launch an airbag. You can do some really highly destructive things now through hacking a car, and it's not that hard. Now look, I had read similar things, but it was on some blog somewhere, and I thought, well, maybe yes, maybe no, right? This is Richard Clarke. He was our top counterterrorism advisor. He had every piece of information available to him when he was inside the United States government. He says doing it is easy. We didn't sign on for that. Did you sign on for the government being able to control your car remotely? Who in their right mind would agree to that? It gets even scarier. He says, so if there were a cyber attack on the car, and I'm not saying there was, I think whoever did it would probably get away with it. Now, if you thought the rest of it was bad, it turns out it's incredibly easy to get away with it, almost impossible to detect. Why is the whole country not talking about this? Is Richard Clarke wrong? If he is, I'd like to see 10 other guys counter him on it. If he's not wrong, okay, they can destroy any of our cars, whoever they are. I'm not saying it's Obama, I'm not saying it's the government, I'm not saying it's the FBI, but obviously some people can do it. They have this enormous power and you can't detect it. All right, continuing. He says, I'm not a conspiracy guy. In fact, I spent most of my life knocking down conspiracy theories. But my rule has always been you don't knock down a conspiracy theory until you can prove it wrong. And in the case of Michael Hastings, so he is specifically talking about this case, in the case of Michael Hastings, what evidence is available publicly is consistent with a car cyber attack. And the problem with that is you can't prove it. Now think about why Richard Clarke's even saying this in the first place. He doesn't have to say this, and in fact, he's probably going to get a lot of heat for saying this. But he's saying it anyway. I don't know if he knows anything more than we know. But even this is incredibly troubling. Furthermore, He says, I think you'd probably need the very best of the U.S. government intelligence or law enforcement officials to discover it. But now, in this case, unfortunately, those are among the different people that people suspect. They're worried that Michael Hastings was going to write about the intelligence community. In fact, there's an email from Michael Hastings, which was sent to BuzzFeed, and it was also sent to the Young Turks, where he said, I'm worried that the FBI is investigating me. Now, the FBI says they're not investigating. Who knows, right? But whether it's the FBI or anyone else, he's worried the intelligence community is looking into him. The only people who can detect whether there was a car cyber attack is the intelligence community. And by the way, the LAPD, now a lot of course, immediately, everybody else in the news is like, LAPD said they're not suspecting anything that's, wrong or untoward. But I mean, if I'm the LAPD and I can't detect this, I look at it and I say, yeah, it's a single car crash at 4:30 in the morning. There's no reason to suspect out of the gate that somebody did something to him. But that doesn't mean that the LAPD is right. And it's not even the LAPD saying definitively, no, nothing bad happened here. We investigated and we're positive nothing happened. They just say it looks like a one-person car crash. You're right, that's what it looks like. And here's a former counterterrorism advisor for the United States of America saying, oh, it looks like a car cyber attack and it would be incredibly easy to do and you couldn't detect it. Well, if you're not scared by that, you're not paying attention, that makes, whether they actually did it to Michael Hastings is an entirely different question. But the fact that they have that capability is amazing. And by the way, if we have that capability, how far are the Chinese from being able to have that capability? How far are the Russians from being able to have that capability? Can they do it to people inside Russia? Can they do it to people inside the United States? Are you worried yet? This is not a light person saying this. This is a guy who had access to every top secret document in the United States. Top counterterrorism advisor. Now look, two more things on this. One, there's got to be a serious investigation here. You can't just assume that it's fine if Richard Clark says, no, it looks like a car cyber attack. Well, then I need someone to investigate if it's a car cyber attack. I don't know how we investigate that, but if I was the government, I would say, look, I need every inspector general that's supposed to overlook their departments that are involved or could possibly be involved in this to overlook their departments. And you get me the best possible guys to try to figure out what happened to that car. And think about why it's so hard to detect, too. Not only is it hard to tell when it's done, but afterwards, the car was such a fiery mess that the whole thing melted down. How are you going to go back and get the evidence? It is going to be enormously hard to prove one way or another. Second of all, if I was Mercedes-Benz, I would be highly motivated. Because right now, if you go with the official storyline, Mercedes-Benz explode upon impact. If you're going a little too fast and you hit something, look, crashes happen and sometimes fires happen. But apparently, if you're in a new Mercedes and you hit something too fast, it is going to be the largest explosion you can imagine. And it is going to be an unbelievably fiery death. The engine is going to be thrown about 50 to 60 yards. Is that what Mercedes wants? If I was Michael Hastings' family, I would want an investigation overall by the top intelligence people we have, if Richard Clark is right, that can figure out if it was a cyber attack or not. I would sue Mercedes-Benz saying, hey, we didn't sign up for our son being, burned up in an accident like that. And if it's not the fault of your car, then tell me whose fault it is. And third of all, I also need to know who might have called Michael Hastings at 4 o'clock in the morning before he got in that car at about 4:15, 4:30 in the morning. Now, if he got a call and somebody said, get on the road when there's no one else on the road, well, that would be a relevant data point. It's not conclusive, but it would be interesting to know. And we do know that the NSA has all those calls. They have every single call. They claim maybe they have the content, maybe they don't. They do. But they admit they have the number called and the number that it's coming from. This would be a good time to find that number, if there is such a number. But one thing's for sure, it's no longer possible to dismiss this as, oh, crazy talk, oh, no way. It's not legitimate. It shouldn't even be within the range of options we're considering. No, if Richard Clark says that a car cyber attack is possible, and in this particular case is also possible, not just generically, but in this case, it is in the range of options, and it needs to be considered and investigated thoroughly.